Welcome back to our channel, where we uncover the most gripping true crime stories from around the world. Today, we're delving into the tragic and heartbreaking case. True crime story that unfolded on the streets of Chicago, a story that shocked a community and highlighted the terrifying extent of human cruelty. This is the case of Luevenia Gardner, a 31-year-old woman who met a gruesome and unimaginable fate at the hands of someone she knew. This true crime documentary takes you deep into the harrowing details of her brutal murder, a chilling crime that left many grappling with the realities of violence and the need for justice. Luevenia's story is not just about the brutal crime itself, but also a reflection on the systemic failures that allowed her killer to commit such an unthinkable act. In this documentary, we explore who Luevenia Gardner was, the events that led up to her tragic death, the shocking details of the crime, and the pursuit of justice that followed. Luevenia Gardner was a 31-year-old woman with dreams, aspirations, and a life full of potential. She was a resident of Chicago, a city known for its vibrancy and diversity, but also one with its fair share of challenges. Luevenia, like many others in her community, navigated her life through these complexities with a sense of hope and determination. Those who knew her described her as a kind-hearted person who always had a smile on her face. She had a tight-knit circle of friends and family who cherished her warmth and spirit. Her life, while not devoid of struggles, was filled with the promise of a better future. Unfortunately, her life was cut tragically short in a manner that no one could have anticipated. Luevenia's story began to take a dark turn when she became involved with a man named Henry Taylor. Details about their relationship remain somewhat scarce, but it is known that their interactions grew increasingly volatile over time. Henry, a 31-year-old man, had a troubled history and was known to have a short temper. He had a background that suggested a propensity for violence and aggression, traits that would soon have deadly consequences. Luevenia, perhaps caught in a web of trust, fear and manipulation, could not have imagined the horrors that would eventually unfold. The relationship between Luevenia Gardner and Henry Taylor was fraught with tension and volatility. While not much is publicly known about their exact history, it is clear that whatever connection they shared turned deadly on a fateful day in April 2021. It was early on the morning of April 16th when an unimaginable act of violence took place, an act that would shock not only those who knew Luevenia, but also an entire city. The gruesome details of that morning would soon emerge, painting a terrifying picture of just how dangerous Henry Taylor could be. Before proceeding, I'd like to share an important message with everyone. We've been exerting our utmost effort to produce top-notch content on our channel. Despite our dedication over a considerable period, we're yet to reach our initial goal of 1,000 subscribers, with 97% of our viewers yet to subscribe. Therefore, we kindly ask you to consider subscribing to our channel if you enjoy our content. The chilling crime took place in the south side of Chicago. In the early hours, Henry Taylor confronted Luevenia Gardner on the street. Whether it was a premeditated encounter or a spontaneous eruption of rage remains a point of speculation. What is known is that Taylor, in a moment of sheer brutality, doused Luevenia with gasoline. The terror of that moment is almost unimaginable. Luevenia, likely stunned and horrified, would have been caught completely off guard. As if this horrifying act wasn't enough, Taylor then proceeded to set her on fire. The flames quickly engulfed her, leaving her in excruciating pain and agony. The attack was as swift as it was barbaric, leaving little room for any intervention. The aftermath of the attack was devastating. Witnesses on the scene were left in shock and disbelief. Some tried desperately to help, while others could only watch in horror. Luevenia was quickly rushed to the hospital, suffering from severe burns that covered a large portion of her body. Medical professionals did everything they could to save her, but the injuries she sustained were too extensive. After fighting for her life for nearly a month, Luevenia Gardner succumbed to her injuries and passed away, leaving behind a trail of grief, anger and unanswered questions. The community around her was left in mourning. Family members and friends were devastated by the senseless violence that had taken away their beloved Luevenia. Vigils were held, and people gathered to express their sorrow and outrage. The sheer brutality of the crime left a scar on the community, one that would not easily heal. The shockwaves rippled far beyond the immediate circle of those who knew Luevenia as news of the heinous act spread across the city and beyond. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that this was not a random act of violence. The police were quick to focus on Henry Taylor as the prime suspect in the case. Taylor was no stranger to law enforcement. He had a history of criminal behaviour that included violent offences. This background made him a person of interest almost immediately. The police began piecing together the evidence, speaking to witnesses, and analysing the sequence of events that led up to the attack. It didn't take long for Henry Taylor to confess to his horrifying actions. According to reports, he admitted to killing Luevenia Gardner by dousing her with gasoline and setting her on fire. His admission added a chilling layer of reality to an already disturbing case. The motive behind his actions, however, remains somewhat ambiguous. Was it a moment of uncontrollable rage? Was there a deeper, more sinister intention behind the attack? These are questions that may never have a satisfactory answer, but what is clear is that Taylor's actions were both deliberate and cruel. With the confession in hand, Henry Taylor was charged with first-degree murder. The charges reflected the severity of his crime and the intentional nature of his actions. As the case moved forward, the community looked on with a mixture of horror and anticipation, hoping for justice for Luevenia and a resolution to the pain that her death had caused. The courtroom proceedings were highly anticipated. The case of Luevenia Gardner's murder was not just about seeking justice for her death, but also about making a statement against the kind of violence that had claimed her life. Prosecutors painted a grim picture of Henry Taylor as a man driven by anger and capable of extreme violence. They detailed the horrifying act of setting a woman on fire and the suffering that Luevenia endured in the aftermath. It was a clear-cut case of premeditated murder, and the prosecution sought to ensure that Taylor would face the maximum penalty for his actions. The defense, on the other hand, struggled to provide any justification or explanation that could mitigate the sheer brutality of Taylor's crime. They attempted to argue that he was not in his right state of mind, but the evidence was overwhelming. Witnesses and forensic experts provided damning testimony that left little room for doubt. The court heard about the severe burns, the desperate attempts to save Luevenia, and the ultimate failure to keep her alive despite the best medical efforts. It was a case that left the jurors with a haunting image of a life violently taken. In the end, the weight of the evidence was too much to ignore. The court found Henry Taylor guilty of first-degree murder. His sentencing would reflect the seriousness of his crime, sending a clear message that such acts of violence would not be tolerated. The verdict brought some semblance of closure to Luevenia's family and friends, but no amount of justice could ever bring her back or erase the trauma of what had happened. The murder of Luevenia Gardner did more than shock a community. It ignited conversations about violence, mental health, and the need for systemic changes. In the aftermath, activists and community leaders called for better interventions to prevent such tragedies from happening again. There were discussions about the signs of potential violence, how to address them, and how to protect those who might be at risk. This true crime case also brought attention to the broader issue of violence against women. It highlighted the terrifying reality that many women face, often from people they know and trust. Luevenia's story became a rallying cry for better support systems, more awareness, and stronger legal protections. Her death was a stark reminder of the need for vigilance and compassion in a society where such horrors can unfold. In the months following the verdict, several initiatives were launched to support victims of violent crimes and to educate the public about recognizing and addressing signs of abuse and aggression. The community's response was one of resilience and determination to ensure that Luevenia's death would not be in vain. As we conclude this true crime documentary, it's important to remember that Luevenia Gardner was more than just a victim of a heinous crime. She was a person with dreams, hopes, and a future that was stolen from her. Her story is not just a true crime story, it's a powerful reminder of the need for community vigilance, the importance of speaking out against violence, and the necessity of seeking justice for those who can no longer speak for themselves. Luevenia's family and friends continue to honour her memory. fighting to raise awareness about the dangers of unchecked violence and advocating for changes that could save others from a similar fate. Her story remains a haunting testament to the extremes of human cruelty, but also a symbol of the strength that communities can show in the face of such horror. The tragic murder of Luevenia Gardner is a true crime case that will not be forgotten. It's a story that compels us to ask hard questions about society, justice, and our responsibilities to one another. As you finish watching this true crime documentary, we hope Luevenia's story stays with you, serving as both a cautionary tale and a call to action for all of us to do better and be better for those who can no longer speak for themselves. Additionally, the Q Crime channel offers numerous other captivating cases for you to explore. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to stay updated with Q Crime Story videos every day. Farewell for now, and we eagerly anticipate your presence in our future videos.